My name is Natalie Carter. I'm 28, a nurse in Boston. Last Thanksgiving, I placed a sealed envelope at the center of our family dinner table. Inside was the DNA report that proved the man I'd called Dad for nearly 3 decades wasn't my father. No one said a word, but their silence screamed the truth I'd been denied my whole life. Turns out everyone at that table, my mother, my grandmother, even my so-called father, had been keeping the same ugly secret. They knew who my real dad was, and for 25 years, they let me believe he was dead. But I wasn't looking for vengeance that night. I was looking for answers, and by the time dessert was served, I had all of them, and more. If you found out your entire identity had been built on a lie, would you stay silent to protect the people who raised you? Or would you tear down their carefully constructed house of cards, one truth at a time? Tell me in the comments. Have you ever uncovered a family secret that changed everything? And don't forget to subscribe to Sophia's Revenge Stories, where every truth finds its voice. I grew up in a modest 2-story house just outside Boston, nestled between the same streets I'd walked to school and the same sidewalks where I learned to ride my bike. To the outside world, our family looked perfectly normal, stable, loving. My mother, Susan Carter, was a librarian, organized, soft-spoken, the kind of woman who always had Band-Aids and snacks in her purse. My dad, well, the man I thought was my dad, was Thomas Carter. He worked for a local insurance company, quiet and always a little distant, like he was standing behind glass. He never hurt me, never raised his voice, but he also never really saw me. He didn't come to my high school graduation. Said he had to work. He never called me pumpkin or sweetheart like the dads on TV. When I got my nursing license, he gave me a stiff handshake. Nothing more, but I didn't complain, because I had my mom, and I had my grandma, Elaine, Mom's mother, who lived with us after Grandpa died. She baked cookies that somehow always matched the season. She told bedtime stories and insisted we say grace, even if dinner was just takeout on paper plates. Still, there were always cracks I couldn't explain. Like the time I was 6 and asked why we never visited Dad's side of the family. Mom said, "They live too far." We lived in Massachusetts. They supposedly lived in Maine. That wasn't too far. Or the family photo albums, page after page of my childhood, school events, holidays. But barely any pictures of Mom pregnant, and none of her with Dad when she was expecting me. I didn't question it too much growing up. Kids don't, really. They take what they're given. But that sense of something being off never left me. It lingered in quiet moments, the way Thomas avoided eye contact during emotional conversations, the way Grandma would change the subject whenever I asked about the day I was born. Like they were rehearsing a play, one they hoped I'd never audition for. Then, a few months before last Thanksgiving, a coworker at the hospital got a 23andMe kit and was raving about finding out she was part Scandinavian. "Come on, Natalie," she laughed. "It's fun. You never know what surprises you'll find." I didn't think much of it, but that night in bed, I kept hearing that word. Surprises. What if there was something in my DNA that explained all the silences, the awkward glances, the walls I could never climb? So I bought a kit. I told myself it was just curiosity. Maybe I'd find out I was 10% Irish instead of German. Maybe it would explain why I hated milk but loved coffee since age 12. I mailed the test, forgot about it, until the results came in 6 weeks later. The first thing that popped up wasn't heritage. It was a match, a close match, paternal. Name, Daniel Carter. Predicted relationship, parent. And just like that, everything unraveled. I stared at the screen like it had punched me. Daniel Carter, parent, not cousin, not uncle, parent. It had to be a glitch, a mistake. There were a million Carters in the country, right? But the test had a 99.9% match. And when I clicked into the profile, I found more than I expected. Daniel Carter was a 57-year-old physician living in Vermont. His profile was public enough to show photos, professional headshots, a couple of candid ones at charity events, even a blurry old image of him in medical scrubs. His eyes were unmistakably like mine, hazel flecked with gold, a trait my mother always told me was from her side. My breath caught. I clicked again, this time on a newspaper article from the 90s. Local doctor honored for rural health work in Boston. Boston, 1996, the year I was born. Suddenly, my fingers felt numb. The silence in my apartment pressed in like cotton in my ears. I opened my phone and scrolled through old photos of my childhood. I looked at my mother's face, at Thomas's, at my own, and then I did something I didn't expect. I went to the bathroom mirror and stared. I mean, really stared. Turned my face side to side, my jawline, my nose, my chin. I didn't look like Thomas, not even close. All those times I'd tried to find a resemblance and failed. I'd blamed myself. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe I was adopted and they were just waiting for the right moment to tell me. But now there was no maybe. I printed the report and folded it into my journal. Then I began to dig. First, I searched Daniel's name with Susan Carter. No social media overlaps, nothing too obvious. But on a public university alumni page, I found them both listed as biology majors at the same college. Same graduation year, same town. That couldn't be coincidence. I checked birth records. My own said, Father, Thomas Carter. But I'd seen enough to know that meant nothing if someone had lied on the form. Then came the biggest discovery of all, one I hadn't expected. I was helping my grandma organize her sewing closet the week before Thanksgiving. Hidden in the back, inside a dusty box marked tax receipts, was a stack of letters and journals. I wasn't snooping, I swear I wasn't. But one journal had my mother's name on it in careful cursive. I flipped to a random page. The ink had faded, but the words punched through anyway. He begged me not to leave. Daniel doesn't know I'm pregnant, but I can't stay. My parents would never approve. They said Thomas would take care of everything, even the paperwork. I read the passage 3 times. The rest of the entries were heartbreaking, conflicted, regretful, and full of references to D, always D, never Daniel. D would be a good father, I know it, but I've already made my choice. It's cruel, but necessary. So they'd all known, my mother, my grandparents, even Thomas apparently. They knew, and they'd built this beautiful, quiet lie around me like a snow globe. Perfect from the outside, but fake to the core. By the time Thanksgiving rolled around, I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was numb. I needed to see their reactions. I needed to watch them squirm, not because I wanted to hurt them, but because I needed the truth to be acknowledged, out loud. So I made a plan. One envelope, one moment, one dinner, and no more pretending. Thanksgiving had always been a carefully choreographed tradition in our family. Grandma Elaine handled the stuffing and mashed potatoes. Mom baked her famous brown sugar pecan pie. Thomas carved the turkey like clockwork every year at 6 p.m. We all had roles to play. This year, I brought something different to the table. Literally. Tucked inside my coat pocket was a sealed manila envelope containing my DNA results, a photocopy of Daniel Carter's family tree, and printed pages of my mother's journal, the ones that proved everything. No one noticed it at first. Not when I greeted them with polite hugs. Not when I passed the cranberry sauce or offered to pour the wine. I was calm, detached, clinical even, just like I'd been trained to be in the ER. Dinner went on. The conversation danced around work, the weather, a neighbor's new car. My mom asked about the hospital. Thomas made a rare joke about flu season. Grandma told a story we'd all heard before. I waited until everyone was relaxed, until the first bites of pie were cut, and plates were nearly cleared. That's when I stood up. I brought something I'd like to share, I said, placing the envelope in the center of the table. 4 sets of eyes landed on it like it was ticking. What's this, honey? Grandma asked, reaching for her napkin. I didn't answer. Just took a breath and looked straight at my mother. Do you know who Daniel Carter is? Her face drained of color. Thomas stiffened. His fork froze midair. Grandma glanced between them, confused. No, Mom whispered. Why would I? Because he's my biological father, I said evenly. And this, I tapped the envelope, proves it. Silence. No one reached for the envelope. No one moved. I continued slowly, like reading vitals. I did a DNA test. Thought it'd be fun. Turns out it rewrote my entire life. Daniel Carter's a doctor in Vermont. You went to school with him. You dated him. And then you left. My mom looked like she might faint. I found your journal, Mom, I said gently. The one you kept when you were pregnant. You called him D. You said your parents didn't approve. that you chose Thomas instead." Tears welled in her eyes. "I wanted to tell you," she croaked. "I was going to—" 25 years, I said. "You had time." Grandma's lip trembled. "We thought it was best, Natalie. You had a stable life. Thomas agreed to raise you as his own." "I never asked for that," I cut in, still calm. "I never needed a perfect story. I just needed the truth." Thomas finally spoke. "I did what I thought was right," he muttered. "She begged me, said the baby needed a name on the certificate, so I gave her mine. But you never gave me a father," I said quietly. A long silence fell. Then I reached into the envelope and pulled out the first page, the DNA confirmation, and slid it toward my mother. "I'm not here to scream or cry," I said, "but I want you to sit with what you did. I want you to feel what I felt when I opened that email." I stood. "Thank you for dinner, but I'll be spending Christmas somewhere else this year." I walked out the door. No one followed. The cold night air hit my skin like truth. I didn't cry on the way home. I thought I might. But all I felt was stillness, like the moment just after a storm, when everything's been torn down and all that's left is space. Space to rebuild. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table and wrote a letter. Not an email, not a text. A real pen-on-paper letter. "Dear Dr. Daniel Carter, I believe I may be your daughter. I know that's a sentence no one expects. I didn't expect to write it either. But after taking a DNA test, I discovered that we share a 99.9% parental match. My mother's name is Susan Carter. You attended the same college in Boston. I was born in April 1996. I'm not looking for anything except the truth. If you're open to a conversation, here's my number. Natalie." I mailed it that afternoon, hand-delivering it at the post office like it was sacred. Then I waited. 4 days later, my phone rang. A Vermont area code. I picked up on the second ring. His voice was cautious but warm, low and measured, like he'd rehearsed every word before calling. "Natalie," he said, "I've been thinking about this for 24 hours straight. I believe you." I didn't realize I'd been holding my breath until I let it out in one long, shaky exhale. He didn't ask for proof, didn't demand another test. He knew. We spoke for over an hour. He told me about his life. He'd never married, never had other children. He worked as a family physician in small towns across New England. He remembered my mother, clearly, said she was brilliant but distant near the end, that she broke things off abruptly, no explanation. When I told him I had been told my father died in a car crash when I was 3, he went quiet. "I would have raised you," he said. "I would have been there." "I know," I whispered. "It wasn't your choice." We decided to meet the following weekend in Vermont, at a quiet cafe halfway between our cities. When I saw him walk in, I felt something shift inside me. He didn't just look like me. He moved like me, tilted his head the same way, even smiled with the same slight curve at the corner of his lips. We talked for hours. He brought an old college yearbook, pointed out a picture of him and my mom standing in front of a biology lab. She was laughing. Her hand rested on his arm. I'd never seen her laugh like that. Before I left, he placed a small, worn photo in my hand. It was a black and white picture of a baby girl, me. "I didn't know you existed," he said, "but if you'll let me, I'd like to know you now." I nodded. From that moment, I began to reclaim my story. Back home, I cleared out a box full of childhood memorabilia, birthday cards signed "Love, Dad," drawings addressed to a man who never looked me in the eye. I packed them away, sealed the box, and left it on my mother's porch with a single note. "You asked me to live a lie. I'm choosing truth." I didn't scream, didn't post online, didn't shame anyone publicly. But over the next few weeks, I made subtle shifts. I updated my name on social media to Natalie Grace Carter. Grace was Daniel's mother's name. I posted a picture of us walking together in the snow, captioned simply, "Found." People noticed. My mother texted, called, emailed, said she was sorry, said she had reasons. I didn't reply. Some truths don't need explanations, just air. My mother didn't give up easily. She left voicemails every other day, long ones, apologizing, crying, begging. "Natalie, please. I know I made a mistake, but I did it out of love. I wanted to protect you. I was young. I was scared. Scared of what? That I wouldn't be able to handle the truth? That Daniel, a man who became a respected doctor, wouldn't have made a good father? Or was it really about protecting herself? After 2 weeks of silence, I finally texted her one sentence. If you want to talk, write me the truth. All of it. 3 days later, I received a thick envelope in the mail. No return address, but I knew her handwriting. The letter inside was 9 pages long. It was full of what she called context, how her parents disapproved of Daniel because his family wasn't well off, how they threatened to cut her off if she stayed with him, how Thomas, a family friend freshly out of a failed engagement, offered to step in once she was pregnant. She confessed she had hoped to tell me when I turned 18, then 21, but time passed. The lie became too big, too old, too tangled. She said she was ashamed. I watched you grow up and wondered every day if you saw through it. When you looked at Thomas with confusion, it broke me, but I didn't know how to undo it without destroying everything. I read the letter in one sitting. Then again and again. I didn't cry. I just felt hollow. Thomas, meanwhile, left without a word. A week after Thanksgiving, I heard from a cousin that he'd packed up his things and moved in with a friend in Connecticut. He left behind only a note on the refrigerator. She deserves her truth. I'm sorry I couldn't be more. He never reached out to me directly, and honestly, I was okay with that. I wasn't angry at him. He'd played a part, a role, but he was never my father. Not in the moments that counted. Grandma tried once too. She called on a Sunday morning, voice trembling. I know you're angry, sweetheart, but families. We make mistakes. We do things we think are right at the time. No, I said gently. You made choices to control the narrative. I'm not angry. I'm just done pretending. That was the last time we spoke. I didn't go to Christmas dinner or New Year's brunch. I spent those days with Daniel, exploring little cafes, walking through snowy trails in Vermont, and learning things that should have been mine to begin with. He told me how he loved jazz, that he'd always wanted to teach, but medicine paid the bills. He showed me pictures of his dog, Cleo, who had passed a few years back but loved to sleep under the table while he read. He remembered the moment he found out Susan left town, how it gutted him. He suspected she was pregnant, but had no way to prove it. I hoped, he said, eyes glassy, but I never imagined you were out there. That sentence broke something open in me, not out of sadness, out of relief. I had spent 28 years chasing a connection that never came, doubting my own instincts, forcing myself to be grateful for crumbs of affection. Now I had a man who looked me in the eye and said, I wanted you. That's all I ever needed. Not perfection, not performance, just presence. By spring, I had moved to a smaller hospital near the Vermont border. My lease ended in Boston, and I didn't renew it. I packed what mattered and left the rest behind. I didn't send notice to my old family. Some endings don't need announcements, just closure. These days, my life is quieter. I work at a small clinic outside Montpellier, where patients call me by name and bring homemade jam during flu season. I live in a cottage with big windows and creaky floors. The mornings are slow, the evenings even slower. Daniel and I have dinner every Sunday. He brings the wine. I cook too much pasta. We talk about everything, his patients, my shift, memories we never got to make, but now get to borrow from the present. He still keeps that first letter I wrote him in the drawer of his desk. He says it reminds him that sometimes life circles back, even when we think it's long gone. I haven't spoken to my mother since that letter, not because I hate her, but because I love myself enough now to protect my peace. There's something sacred about walking away from people who once held your whole world in their hands, and realizing you never needed them to begin with. I don't regret anything, not the confrontation, not the silence that followed, not the life I left behind, because the truth didn't ruin me, it rescued me. We grow up thinking blood is everything, that family means loyalty, sacrifice, obedience. But real family is who shows up, who tells the truth, even when it's hard, who chooses you, not out of obligation, but out of love. I lost a version of my family that never really existed, but I gained something far greater, myself. The truth might shatter your illusions, but it will never destroy your worth. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose honesty over harmony. and walk toward the life that's finally yours to live. What would you do if you found out your family lied about your identity for 25 years? If you were Natalie, would you forgive them or walk away too? Let me know in the comments. If you support Natalie's choice, vote Democrat25. Don't forget to subscribe to Sophia's Revenge Stories for more life-changing karma stories every single day. Share this story with someone who needs to hear. The truth doesn't destroy you, it sets you free.